Well, hello there, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Anwar Youssef Dunbar. This is Big Discussions 76 Entertainment and Media. First of all, please like this stream, please share it, and please subscribe to my channel. And that also goes for if you're watching this on the playback. So today's live stream is going to involve a book I'm reading called Code of the Street, which was written by Dr. Elijah Anderson. Give me 1 second here. Code of the Street. Yeah, there it is. Let's see. This is not a new book. It's been out for a while, and I actually first heard of Code of the Street right here on YouTube. First of all, I see one person is watching. You probably don't want to be called out like that, but I want to thank whoever. I want to thank you for watching, and whoever comes through this channel. Oh, it's Corrine Henry. All right. Welcome, Corrine. It was quite a day over on the Roger Report today, wasn't it? And I think what I'm going to read today, I'm going to try not to take too long because I want to go outside while there's still some daylight left. But I realized a week or so ago that I can sneak in live streams when I finish my workday, as opposed to just doing them on weekends. Because, after a certain hour, I get a little burnt out because I'm sitting in front of a computer all day. And I realized that I could, with the technology and just by being efficient, there are things that I can squeeze in immediately after my work day. So this live stream, it's going to discuss this book right here. Code of the Street by Dr. Elijah Anderson. And the subtitle or subheading, whatever you call that underneath, I'm a writer, so I should know this. Decency, Violence, and Moral Life of the Inner City. And Corinne, I think you're from New York City, so you'll probably be able to relate to all this. But where did this come from? Why did I choose to discuss this book over here? So first of all, I intentionally, there's a method to my madness. There's a reason why I do everything that I do. So the reason I named this channel Big Discussion 76 Entertainment and Media is because I thought it was wise and prudent to leave the umbrella as wide as possible. Some channels in this space, they do just movies. Some channels over here, they do books. I haven't found any of those yet, but then again, I haven't gone looking for them. Some do a mixture of everything. So I thought it would be cool to leave it open so I could do things like books. As you know, I came to YouTube as a writer first. So, and then at some point, I think probably at the end, I'll show my writing website. Again, I decided not to cam up today. I'm seeing these three signal. I'm seeing the signal icon back here, my backstage. So in some of my live streams, my actual live image has looked kind of grainy. So I'm just going to go with the Green Lantern avatar that you see right there. So where did this come from? This book, this subject? Well, shout out to Mamiya Obsidian Ali. Obsidian mentioned this book several times, and that's where I first heard of it. In terms of, and I became intrigued when I heard about it because social class is very much interwoven into what Obsidian talks about. He talks about, well, I'm not going to say I'll say BFF. If you want to know what BFF is, Go follow Mamiya Obsidian Ali. He's on with Bernard Riley a lot of days, but he talks about Black relationships, and he oftentimes ends up giving commentary on the Black community. And when you're talking about the Black community, social class almost inevitably comes up. And so one of the most meaningful books that I read in my lifetime was this book right here, Our Kind of People Inside America's Black Upper Class. This was a game changer for me, and I'm going to tell you why. But coincidentally, as I was figuring out what would pop over on this channel, I said, okay, well, why don't I do some book reviews? Why don't I discuss some of the books that were very meaningful for my life and my journey? And so I thought about that book. And to date, this review of Our Kind of People Inside America's Black Upper Class is the most popular video here on Big Discussions 76 Entertainment and Media. So as a content creator, you have to think about, I like to say that me and my brother, who has taught me a lot about media and shooting video and editing video and how to use Filmora Wondershare, he and I have gone around and around and around in circles numerous times about what to do on YouTube, what works, do's and don'ts, those kinds of things. But as a content creator, you have to think about what's popular on your channel, because in my opinion, these channels are little storefronts. So you have to think about what your customers are buying the most and what they're consuming the most, just like the McDonald's brothers. And with this being the most popular video on this channel, I said, okay, well, people are resonating with this. Well, let's go back to discussing social class in the Black community. So that's why I'm here. So this is actually going to take us in the opposite extreme. That book was about America's Black upper class. This book is going to talk about what it's like to have to navigate the streets as when you're coming from a street family and when you're coming from a decent family. And that's very, very exciting, because I grew up in what's called a decent family. And in our community, in our families, putting those labels on homes and families, I think for some people is very offensive. And I don't remember those distinctions being made when I grew up on Buffalo's east side. Buffalo's east side. So I grew up on Buffalo's east side, which many would call the inner city, but I would consider us to have been sheltered. Through my schooling, I moved down to Charlotte, North Carolina. I attended Johnson C. Smith University, which is a smaller, probably lesser known HBCU. The most well-known HBCUs are obviously Howard and Morehouse and Spelman and Tuskegee and Hampton. This was a smaller HBCU, but I got to interact with other Black kids from all walks of life. Some of them were from the streets. Some of them were from the upper class. When you think about an HBCU and when you go to an HBCU, you're going to run into the Divine Nine. So Alpha Phi Alpha, Alpha Kappa Alpha, Delta Sigma Theta, Omega Psi Phi. So those were front and center there. But I didn't really grow up with those fraternities and sororities. So I really didn't know what I was dealing with. I really didn't know whether or not I should join. I didn't really understand the benefits of joining other than being a superstar on campus. My dad is actually a Q, though maybe, as I'll describe at some other point, he wasn't an active Q. So I didn't really understand the importance of getting involved in those Black Greek organizations other than having a superstar status on campus, which came with a bunch of other perks, which I won't discuss at this time. After I moved from Charlotte, I went to, this is the only picture of the University of Michigan that I could find. It's the big house, but I pursued my PhD. That raises you into another class and into another strata, as only, I think, less than 1% of people in the United States have a PhD. And then I settled after 2 more years of training in the Washington, D.C. area. And social class is all over the Washington, D.C. area, especially as a Black person. So I'm saying all this to say, I'm saying this for context. I'm saying that I basically came from the inner city in a sheltered way. There were debutantes. There was a debutante ball in Buffalo. Give me 1 second here, because I was going to show all of this. I'm kind of ad-libbing this. I feel a sneeze coming on. Okay, it went away. This is from my blogging platform, the Big Words blog site, before I started publishing content from customers and contributors. I wrote this one. This is called A Discussion About Social Class in the Black Community. And this blog post is actually, well, it actually references our kind of people and Code of the Street read from shortly. But in this post, and when I look back at my youth, we did have a debutante ball in Buffalo, but you had to be hooked into those circles and you had to be connected with the sororities and those kinds of things. There was a cotillion. One of my friends was in a cotillion, but you had to be hooked into those circles to be involved in that. This blog post is beneath this live stream, by the way, in case you want to read it. So I'm saying that to say that I grew up somewhere in the middle. When I look back at it, I grew up somewhere in the middle of all these social strata. I wasn't street, okay? I wasn't running in a gang. I wasn't hood, but also we didn't grow up, quote unquote, bougie. So we were somewhere in the middle. And what I learned in part of my journey is that I've had to figure out within this thing called Foundational Black America or ADOS Black America, I've had to figure out where to fit in. I've had to figure out which tribe I belong to. And this has impacted my social circles. It's impacted my dating life. All you have to do is look at videos. And all of this has been explained as I've come to YouTube. All you have to do is look at videos by BGS or, well, now, you know, Kevin Samuels is blowing up, and look at videos by all the content creators, Obsidian, Angry Man. Social class is everywhere. And it's really, really important to figure out where you fit in and with whom you fit in. Ron Wills, one of my other popular videos on this channel, was a review of Ron Wills' Nice Guys and Players. Ron Wills, the field master, has always been very, very outspoken about knowing who your tribe is and knowing who you fit in with. So even though I have a PhD from the University of Michigan, I've had to learn how to do nicer things. And I don't fit in with everybody in the Washington, D.C. area. I go to one of the more, well, right now I go to one of the more affluent churches in Washington, D.C. I don't fit in with everybody at that church. So I've talked for 15 minutes. I haven't gotten to the book yet. And I'm going to get to it shortly. Let me just show you something. Over on my main channel, my sports channel has hit 1,000 subscribers. Knock on wood, it took forever. I didn't think I would get there. But over on my main channel tomorrow night, I discuss general topics. I'm going to do this. I thought I had it. Oh, there it is. I'm going to do this. I'm going to, my intent is to go somewhere on Mother's Day, so I won't be here. But I'm going to do a live stream on Mother's Day. And I've entitled this Mother's Day 2021. How has motherhood changed? Did your mom get it right? So this one may get a little bit emotional, depending upon who comes on and depending upon what they have to say about how their mother raised them, and whether or not their mom got it right or got it wrong, and what they got right and what they got wrong. Karine, I know you're a mother, but when I think back to the memories of my mother, many of, and based upon what I understand now, all the social class, all the stuff we talk about on the Roger Report, all the stuff BGS talks about, all the stuff is interwoven. And I don't think, even talking to my mother today, I don't think she necessarily understands the significance of social class and the fact that within whatever you want to call it, some people don't like AO, some people don't like FBA. Within that one umbrella of being an African American, there are so many tribes within that one classification of being African American. And a major challenge, and one of my major challenges growing up and even in adulthood, is figuring out who my tribe is. So with that, let's jump into Code of the Street. And I'm going to put this picture of the book back up because I like seeing color. And so I don't want to just see a black screen of my avatar. So give me 1 second here. I'm going to read 7 pages. And I'm going to stop because that's the actual text is pretty dense. And what I realized is that I can live stream. There's so much meat in this book. There's so much meat and potatoes in this book that I can live stream this in pieces. And I don't have to wait until I'm finished reading the book to go over all of this. And once again, juxtapose. I remember a woman said that on Kevin Samuel's show one night. She kept saying that. I don't know if it was the lawyer woman. Juxtapose this against my review of Our Kind of People. There are different tribes within Black America. And depending upon where you come from, you might have to spend some time figuring out who and what your tribe is. Okay. And this coincidentally comes from chapter 1 of Code of the Street. By the way, this is a picture of Dr. Elijah Anderson right here. This is him. I don't know how old this picture is. This book is not new. Once again, this is back in the this is from 1999, but all of what we're seeing, much of what he describes in this book, we're still seeing today. We're still grappling with today. And, BGS argues that we're being assimilated and there may not be a FBA community as we know it 10 to 20 years from now. But as long as there is, we're probably going to go around and around and around in circles about all this stuff. So chapter 1 is entitled Decent and Street Families. I'm just going to read about the decent families. That's going to take up enough time. I'm going to stop at certain points to take a swig of my beverage here and probably to, discuss any random thoughts I have about what was read. Hey, I appreciate you guys being here. Please click the like button if you're coming in. If you're already here, please click the like. Let me take a look here. Okay. At the end, if someone wants to come in and say something about what I read, I'll drop the link. If not, I will cut this off. But reading this piece by piece is going to allow me to bounce off this content over on my main channel, and it's going to allow me to create other things. So, decent families. And again, this is, some people would consider this offensive because I had a lady friend, another PhD, and I remember I was describing my mentor's family, and I said they were a successful family. And she kind of rolled her neck and said, well, what do you mean by a successful family? So these kinds of things can be offensive within our group. And this book is based in Philadelphia. So almost everyone residing in poor inner city neighborhoods is struggling financially and therefore feels a certain distance from the rest of America. But there are degrees of alienation captured by the terms decent and street or ghetto, suggesting social types. The decent family and the street family, in a real sense, represent two poles of value orientation, two contrasting conceptual categories. The labels decent and street, which the residents themselves use, amount to evaluative judgments that confer status on local residents. The labeling is often the result of a social contest among individuals and families of the neighborhood. Individuals of either orientation may coexist in the same extended family. Moreover, decent residents may judge themselves to be so while judging others to be of the street. And street individuals often present themselves as decent while drawing distinctions between themselves and still other people. There is also quite a bit of circumstantial behavior. That is, one person may at different times exhibit both decent and street orientations depending on the circumstances. Although these designations result from much social jockeying, there do exist concrete features that define each conceptual category, forming a social typology. Okay. The resulting labels are used by residents of inner city communities to characterize themselves and one another, and understanding them is part of understanding life in the inner city neighborhood. Most residents are decent or are trying to be. The same family is likely to have members who are strongly oriented towards decency and civility, whereas other members are oriented toward the street and to all that it implies. There is also a great deal of code switching. A person may behave according to either set of rules depending on the situation. Decent people, that makes me laugh every time I read it, especially young people, often put a premium on the ability to code switch. They share many of the middle class values of the wider white society, but know that open display of such values carries little weight on the street. It doesn't provide the emblems that say, I can take care of myself. Hence, such people develop a repertoire of behaviors that do provide that security. Those strongly associated with the street who have less exposure to the wider society may have difficulty code switching. Imbued with the code of the street, they either don't know the rules of decent behavior or may see little value in displaying such knowledge. At the extreme of the street-oriented group are those who make up the criminal element. People in this class are profound casualties of the social and economic system, and they tend to embrace the street code wholeheartedly. They tend to lack not only a decent education, though some are highly intelligent, but also an outlook that would allow them to see far beyond their immediate circumstances. Rather, many pride themselves on living the thug life, actively defying not simply the wider social conventions, but the law itself. They sometimes model themselves after successful local drug dealers and rap artists like Tupac Shakur and Snoop Doggy Dogg, and they take heart from professional athletes who confront the system and stand up for themselves. In their view, policemen, public officials, and corporate heads are unworthy of respect and hold little moral authority. Highly alienated and embittered, they exude generalized contempt for the wider scheme of things and for a system they are sure has nothing but contempt for them. Members of this group are among the most desperate and most alienated people of the inner city. For them, people and situations are best approached both as objects of exploitation and as challenges possibly having a trick to them. And in most situations, their goal is to avoid being caught up in the trick bag. Shout out to Tariq Nasheed. Theirs is a cynical outlook, and trust of others is severely lacking, even trust of those they are close to. Consistently, they tend to approach all persons and situations as part of life's obstacles and as things to subdue or to get over. To get over, individuals develop effective hustle or game plan, setting themselves up in a position to prevail by being slick and outsmarting others. In line with this, one must always be wary of one's counterparts to assume that they are involved with you only for what they can get out of the situation. Correspondingly, life in public features an intense competition for scarce social goods in which winners totally dominate losers and in which losing can be a fate worse than death. So one must be on one's guard constantly. One is not always able to trust others, in part because so much is at stake socially, but also because everyone else is understood to be so deprived. In these circumstances, violence is quite prevalent in families, in schools, and in streets, becoming a way of public life that is effectively governed by the code of the street. Decent and street families deal with the code of the street in various ways. An understanding of the dynamics of these families is thus critical to an understanding of the dynamics of the code. It is important to understand here that the family one emerges from is distinct from the family one finds in the streets. For street-oriented people, especially, the family outside competes with blood relatives for an individual's loyalties and commitments. Nevertheless, blood relatives always come first. The folklore of the street says, in effect, that if I will fight and take up for my friend, then you know what I will do for my own brother, cousin, nephew, aunt, sister, or mother, and vice versa. Blood is thicker than mud. Okay, that's the intro to that chapter. I'm going to read some of the comments here. I'm going to take a sip of my drink, and then I'm going to move on, and we'll talk about decent families. Corrine says, good evening, Dr. Dunbar in chat. Corrine, thank you for being here. Yep. I will check out this book. Let's see. Will you do nonfiction books as well? Yeah, we'll do some of that since you requested it. Greetings, Dr. Dunbar. And Corrine, if you have a favorite book, I'll even invite you up to time and we can do a co-discussion or do a two-person discussion. Extended Clip says peace and love at Dr. Ann Wharton fam. Appreciate that. Greetings, Sir Anthony. Salute. Much love. I'm driving soon. I can relate to this discussion. Dr. Elijah Anderson has some amazing work. Blessings to our elder scholar from Extended Clips. Good afternoon to Corinne Henry. This is a great topic. The game, great insight. I'm always fascinated to hear scholars describe and explain street culture. You know, it's interesting. When I was reading that first section, I thought about my best friend, who I'm still best friends with today, though our lives took separate paths. I remember in high school, we started out, probably in middle school, we started out playing basketball together. And then we went to separate high schools. He went to a suburban high school because his parents moved him to the suburbs, which is fascinating because he was drawn back to the streets. And I finished high school, got my bachelor's, got my PhD, and his life took a different path. I'll just say that. He's still alive, but he had what I would describe as a pretty comfortable upbringing, but he gravitated back towards the street life, and we've remained friends throughout. So you see that sometimes, even kids from decent families and sometimes affluent families are drawn to the streets. Take a sip of this. And these differences are important because, this affects how we vote. This affects who we live with, who we associate with. If you listen to shows like the Little Big Night Show, it affects how we see other individuals within our same ethnic group. Okay, so decent families, that makes me laugh every time I see that, because again, Black America is complex, and when you hear decent family, I can hear some people getting triggered because that kind of almost lends itself to a better family. So let's see what Dr. Elijah Anderson has to say about decent families. I guess the street was his tribe. You know what, Corinne Henry? I don't know if. Well, he certainly gravitated towards that tribe early on, but he had a comfortable upbringing, one that I envied at some point. But at this point, I'm much more thankful for my own. So, decent families. In decent families, there is almost always a real concern with and certain amount of hope for the future. Such attitudes are often expressed in a drive to work to have something or to build a good life, while at the same time trying to make do with what you have. This reminds me of my mother. This means working hard, saving money for material things, and raising children, any child you touch, to try to make something out of themselves. Decent families tend to accept mainstream values more fully than street families. And they attempt to instill them in their children. Probably the most meaningful description of the mission of the decent family, as seen by members and outsiders alike, is to instill backbone and a sense of responsibility in its younger members. That's significant. And I'll probably talk about this on my live stream tomorrow when I talk about how has motherhood changed and whether or not your mother got it right or wrong. Going back to my mother's mother, my grandmother, one of her philosophies or values was that you raise your children for society. And I think my mother adopted that as well. But that leads to the question, are we still seeing that today? For the crop of parents, and I'm not a parent right now, are they having their children and raising their children with the intent of raising them to be productive members of society? That's some interesting food for thought. In their efforts toward this goal, decent parents are much more able and willing than street-oriented ones to ally themselves with outside institutions such as schools and churches. They value hard work and self-reliance and are willing to sacrifice for their children. They harbor hope for a better future for their children, if not for themselves. Rather than dwelling on the hardships and inequities facing them, many such decent people, particularly the increasing number of grandmothers raising grandchildren, often see their difficult situation as a test from God and derive great support from their faith and church community. Okay, now how many of you does that resonate with? The role of the man of the house is significant. What's going on, Sheed? The role of the man of the house is significant. Working class Black families have traditionally placed a high value on male authority. Okay, this was 20 years ago when he wrote this book. Generally, the man is seen as the head. Oh, yep, this is 20 years ago. Generally, the man is seen as the head of the household, with the woman as his partner and the children as their subjects. His role includes protecting the family from threats, at times literally putting his body in the line of fire on the street. In return, he expects to rule his household and to get respect from the other members. And he encourages his sons to grow up with the same expectations. Being a breadwinner or good provider is often a moral issue, and a man unable to provide for family invites disrespect from his partner. Many young men who lack the resources to do so often say, I can't play house, and opt out of forming a family, perhaps leaving the woman and any children to fend for themselves. In intact nuclear families, although in the minority, in the impoverished inner city, provide powerful role models. Typically, husband and wife work at low-paying jobs, sometimes juggling more than one such job each. They may be aided financially by the contributions of a teenage child who works part-time. Such families, along with other such local families, are often vigilant in their desire to keep the children away from the streets. In public, such an intact family makes a striking picture as the man may take pains to show, In public, such an intact family makes a striking picture as the man may take pains to show he is in complete control, with the woman and children following his lead. Again, this was 20 years ago. On the inner city streets, this appearance helps him play his role as protector, and he may exhibit exaggerated concern for his family, particularly when other males are near. His actions and words, including loud and deep voice assertions to get his small children in line, let strangers know this is my family and I am in charge. He signals that he is capable of protecting them and that his family is not to be messed with. I witnessed such a display one Saturday afternoon at the Gallery, an indoor shopping mall with a primarily Black, Hispanic, and working to middle-class white clientele. Rashid Taylor, I laugh because she is in the comment section. Rashid Taylor, his wife, Aisha, and their children, Rhonda, Jimmy, and Malika, wandered about the crowded food court looking for a place to sit down to eat. They finally found a table next to mine. Before sitting down, Mr. Taylor asked me if the seats were available, to which I replied they were. He then summoned his family, and they walked forward promptly and in an orderly way to take the seats. The three children sat on one side and the parents on the other. Mr. Taylor took food requests and, with a stern look in his eye, told the children to stay seated until he and his wife returned with the food. The children nodded attentively. After the adults left, the children seemed to relax, talking more freely and playing with one another. When the parents returned, the kids straightened up, received their food, and began to eat, displaying quiet and gracious manners all the while. It was very clear to everybody looking on that Mr. Taylor was in charge of his family, with everyone showing him utter deference and respect. Extremely aware of the problematic and often dangerous environment in which they reside, decent parents tend to be strict in their child rearing practices, encouraging children to respect authority and walk a straight moral line. They sometimes display an almost obsessive concern about trouble of any kind and encourage their children to avoid people in situations that might lead to it. But this is very difficult since the decent and the street families live in such close proximity. Marge, a slight 43-year-old, married, decent parent of 5 who resides in such a neighborhood, relates her experience. Okay, I have 3 more pages, and then I'm gonna stop. Now, this is Marge speaking. But you know what happens now? I have 5 children, or I had 5 children. My oldest son got killed in a car accident. My children have always been different, in parentheses, decent. And sometimes we have to act that way, in parentheses, street, that other people act to show them that you're not going to be intimidated, that my child is going to go to the store. They're going to come home. They're going to come out here and play. They're going to go to school. You don't want to do that, but you can't go to them and talk. Because I've tried that. I've tried to go to people and say, listen, these are children. Let's try to make them get along. I remember years ago, my sons had some expensive baseball mitts and a bat and bats that was given to them. I didn't buy them. They got them from Mr. Lee because he had the baseball team. And so he gave my sons some baseball bats and gloves. At that time, the park at 27th and Girard was Fred Jackson Stadium. They call it Ruth Bloom now. My sons played baseball there. So one little boy wanted to borrow some of the gloves and the bat. I told my children, don't let him hold or use the gloves and the bat. But they let him hold them anyway. So he told them that when he finished with them, he would put them on the porch. I told them they were never going to see them again. And they were never put on the porch. So I went to his mother, that was my neighbor, and I approached her very nicely and said, Johnny didn't bring Terry and Curtis's gloves and bat back. You know, she cursed me out. I was shocked. She said, he doesn't have to take a so-and-so bat and ball. And that woman really shocked me and hurt my feelings. I said, forget it. Just forget it. She was really ignorant, but I had to, even though I didn't get ignorant, get to her level because my son was there. But I had to say some negative things to let her know that I was just shocked. But I've been here, residing in this neighborhood 22 years. In 22 years, I've had at least 10 different separate incidents that I had to go out and talk to somebody to the point that I told my children no more. Somebody's going to get hurt because they don't know when to stop. Okay, my daughter Annette, she went to Germantown High. So she was in about the 9th grade, had never had a fight in her life. She came from the store one day and she told me about this girl that kept picking on her. She came up on the porch and said, Mommy, come to the door. I want to show you this girl that keeps picking on me. Of course, anybody that bothered them, I always wanted to see who it was in case I had to go see their parents or whatever. So I came and looked over the railing on the porch, and me and my daughter were looking down the street in that direction, not really at her, which could have been taken as offensive. The girl came up and said, who the fuck are you looking at? I said to my daughter, don't say anything. I said to the girl, you better go home. You better take your little butt home. Okay. So she did go home. That afternoon, my daughter was sitting on the steps of the porch and reading a book. Now, this is a child who never had a fight, gets good grades. I think I raised her extremely well. She's a biochemist now. She's sitting on the step reading her little book, and the girl came up to her, said something to her. I wasn't even out there. And so by the time my sons came to get me, my daughter and her were fighting. That was the first fight that she ever had in her life. And she was in the 9th grade. So I went out there and separated them. The girl went around the corner. When she came back, she had 20 different people with her. But I knew what was going to happen. So the same baseball bats I told you about, I told my son to go get the baseball bats from the hallway. I said, we're going to get off the porch. I said, we're not going to get off the porch, but if we have to, if they come up here, we're going to have to do something. So they came back, and I had to actually coax them off like I was a little tough. I'm like, I'm not going to take it. And I said to my sons, if they come up here, we're going to pay they ass back. And all that kind of stuff. And that's how I got off. And that's how I got them off us. I mean, it was about 20 of them, friends, family, and neighbors. Okay. I'm going to read one more, probably 3/4 of a page. I was struggling reading that part because her, how should I say this? Prose might not be the right word, but her speaking was different than Dr. Elijah Anderson's. So I was kind of struggling with reading what she said. Okay. As I indicated above, people who define themselves as decent tend themselves to be polite and considerate of others and teach their children to be the same way. But this is sometimes difficult, mainly because of the social environment in which they reside. And they often perceive a need to get ignorant, to act aggressively, even to threaten violence. For whether a certain child gets picked on may well depend not just on the reputation of the child, equally important on how bad the child's family is known to be. How many people the child can gather together for the purposes of defense or revenge often emerges as a critical issue. Thus, social relations can become practical matters of personal defense. Violence can come at any time, and many persons feel a great need to be ready to defend themselves. At home, at work, and in church, decent parents strive to maintain a positive mental attitude and a spirit of cooperation. When disciplining their children, they tend to use corporal punishment, but unlike street parents, who can often be observed lashing out at their children, they may explain the reason for the spanking. These parents express their care and love for teenage children by guarding against the appearance of any kind of loose behavior, violence, drug use, staying out very late, that might be associated with the streets. In this regard, they are vigilant, observing children's peers, as well as sometimes embarrassing their own children by voicing value judgments in front of their friends. These same parents are aware, however, that the right material things as well as a certain amount of cash are essential to young people's survival on the street. So they may purchase expensive things for their children, even when money is tight, in order that the children will be less tempted to turn to the drug trade or other aspects of the underground economy for money. All right. So I think I'll stop reading for now. And I think that's a good start to this. And again, when you're tomorrow on my main channel, I'll be doing a little Mother's Day live stream. And I think the question I addressed, or the name of that live stream is Has motherhood changed? And did your mother get it right or did your mother get it wrong? I think my mother strived to create a decent home, quote unquote. And I think that there were major adjustments that I had to make when I went out into the world, and especially when I went to my HBCU. I saw all kinds of things at that HBCU, especially my first year. There were a lot of street kids, quote unquote, in the dormitory. They made me move into that first year because I had 1 year of college at a PWI, and then I transferred to an HBCU. So I was technically a sophomore, but they moved me in with the freshman guys at my HBCU. It was Liston Hall, and it got the nickname Liston Heights, like it was an actual ghetto, but there was a lot going on in there. And so when you come from a decent family, you have to figure out how to navigate the world in terms of forming your friendship circles, also in terms of dating, and also when you start your career, and then when you have something to lose, you also have to watch the friends whose company you're keeping, because you don't know what they're getting into. Let's see. Sir Anthony says, what's your other channel, Dr. Dunbar? Give me 1 second, Sir Anthony. I'll drop the link in the chat. This is my original channel right here. Hopefully YouTube is acting well today. I'm going to drop the link in the chat if some of you guys want to come up and say something. I'm sure this resonates with some of you all. And this, again, this is, whether it's very blatant or whether it's very subtle, this is interwoven into a lot of the discussions that we have on these panels every day, especially over on the Roger Report. And also shout out to, speaking of which, shout out to Rael. I actually got the idea to read something from Rael, who reads to us every day. There's the StreamYard link. Karine, if one of you guys wants to come up and say something, if some of this, if you can relate to some of this, please come into the stream and say a few words. If you haven't, please like the stream. Karine, I know you're from New York City. I had one of my exes is from New York City. She's from Crown Heights. And I think she and I went through this. How should I describe this? Well, she was from Crown Heights and I was from the east side of Buffalo. And I was from a sheltered home on the east side of Buffalo. So that's something you have to reconcile, because she was kind of used to Crown Heights. She was used to the streets, and I grew up in this cushy, comfortable home. So that happens. That happens. So, and again, this is juxtaposed. I think that's the right word. I'm doing this, number one, because Obsidian mentioned the book on his channel, but also this was the most popular. My review of Our Kind of People was the most popular. Well, I guess probably still is the most popular video I have on this channel. Okay, Extended Clips is coming in. Let me let him in. And so I thought it would be cool to kind of go in the other direction and talk about, well, the other side. What's going on, Extended Clips?
Good afternoon, Dr. Anwar. How you doing, brother?
Good yourself?
I'm doing great. This is a blessing to be on. You're a mentor of mine and BGS and all the brothers. So this is just a blessing to be here, and I can definitely relate to this subject.
Okay.
In a lot of ways, you know.
Where are you from?
I'm originally from Oakland, California. I was raised in Oakland, California.
Which
My
part?
family is also from New York, Brooklyn, and also Long Beach. I got family all over because I have a huge family because I was actually adopted when I was 5. So I actually have 2 sets of families in a way. So yeah, it's real. It's a blessing.
Now, let me ask you this. And I'm going to tell you why I'm asking this. Which part of Oakland are you from? You from what? Was it Vallejo or
I'm from North
Hayward?
Oakland. I'm from both North Oakland and East Oakland. So earlier part of my childhood was North Oakland, and then uh, I would say adolescent would be East Oakland, adolescent adult, but really all over Oakland because it's such a small city.
Yeah.
You know, it's such a small city. It's got its own special flavor, like a Chicago or so it's a really special place.
Okay. Yeah, I went out there once, and I was dating someone out there,
Okay.
and one of the I'm going to try to keep this vague, but basically one of the first things she told me, she was in media, she was on television, and one of the things she told me, and this dovetails right back into this. One of the first things she told me is, I'm an educated street girl.
Mm.
And so she did, when I found out about her past, yeah, she was into some things when she was younger.
Sure.
And those elements came out throughout the course of our relationship. So going back to what, the octane scale, climbers, some of the things that Ron Wills talks about, those things, when a person achieves a certain level of education, those aspects don't necessarily go away.
Sure. It's almost like ghosts in the closet, right?
Yeah. They may be covered up, they may be shrouded a little bit, but those instincts, those behaviors, those tendencies don't necessarily go away.
It's very interesting, and in all actuality, that's a great insight, because part of that testimony we can all attest to is that from whatever insecurities or doubts or anything we had in our past, from wherever, like I'm proud to say my mother was in the game, and I love her. That's my dear mother, and being that she was in the game, what I mean by that, in a couple different ways, game kind of, it means uncommon information, from what my teachers have taught me, but it also means a certain type of a lifestyle that we all, not all, but certain family members or friends or people we've known in our society have been subjugated to in some sort of way. We all have, right? So, like, hey, that I love everything and everybody, and that's just one more person to love if that's part of her journey or that was part of her story. But that doesn't judge, or that doesn't give her right or me right to project pain onto other genders, other religions, other cities, anything. And that's what happens a lot of times, is we take that pain, we internalize it, and it just, the cancer just grows throughout our life. And then we try to code switch, because society says this is success, this is success, and also this is success, no matter where you're from. And being that we come from certain backgrounds, we get funneled or vacuumed or even propelled into certain types of what would you say, certain ideals, I'd say, or false ideals.
Now, Karina's joined us, and when you come from a quote unquote decent family,
Sure.
you might be well mannered, you might be well behaved. Some people perceive that as weakness, and they will test you. And some people may perceive that. Some people who look like you may perceive that as, well, there are a lot of us who've had our blackness questioned throughout our lives. So there are all kinds of things that happen when you come from a quote unquote decent family. So Karina's joined us. Karina, thank you for the cash app. I really appreciate that. I noticed you said that your mother was strict. Well, you want to say something about any of this or what I've read?
Yeah, the book you read resonated with me as well. I would say I was from a decent family. I mean, my experiences as an immigrant in like a different environment, growing up with our culture within the culture it was different. We had to certain roles. We had to behave at home. We couldn't just because our friends was doing certain things don't mean that we could have done it. So I grew up like that. I grew up with that, I guess, code switching or whatever you call it.
Hmm.
And I think it's a good thing though for me because it teacher taught me that I could, survive wherever I went. I mean, I guess, um, we always make it a negative. I know everybody says, "Oh yeah, people who grew up in this like with the street culture, um, it never leaves them." But they survived. They survived the streets and they thrive. So in a way, it could be a good thing. It doesn't always have to be a negative thing.
Hmm.
But like for a person who wants someone who is a little like uh, New York females get a bad rap, but people have to realize
Oh.
that New York is tough. You're growing up in a tough environment, so you can't be. I mean, you'll get crushed if you're just a sweetie, meek, Minnie Mouse type person. You have to have some type of um, uh, gumption to you to survive and thrive.
Yep.
And I kind of like that. That's the thing. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Yeah. Yeah. I can hear you. Yeah. I can
Okay.
remember. I could think back to that one ex. We were in our. I think we were in our late teens at that time. She was from Brooklyn. She was from Crown Heights, and I was from the east side of Buffalo. And I always felt. I don't know. I always sensed that. Well, it's where she was from. She had this. Well, you said gumption, but there was always this thing that I'm from Brooklyn, and you know I'm from Brooklyn, and
we,
I'm from
I
Brooklyn.
mean, we do have that type of representation. I could tell you. Okay, I went to junior high school in Crown Heights. I'm from I would say Flatbush Fitness Park, which is more Caribbean based.
Yeah, yeah.
And I went to school in Crown Heights, and I had to literally I got jumped as a young girl in middle school, and I had to fight back. I literally had to fight back. I remember fighting back. Like, so this is the environment females are growing up in. So people think that okay, you're growing up in that type of environment where people are jumping you just for you going to school, being regular, minding your business. You have to you grow up with that tough exterior, which is I get it. A lot of guys don't like that masculine thing, but you
Hmm.
have to survive. It's about what if females never fought back, everybody would end up in the hospital. You have to, our people will continue picking on you. It's kind of like that bully thing when you have to stick up to a bully because if you don't, they'll continue bullying you. Whereas this generation, they have all these services to help them. When we was growing up in school, people bully us. You told your mother. Maybe they spoke to the other child's mother. That was it. There was no like resources. So kids had to, our generation, I'm speaking for like people from had to grow up with a tough exterior, and we had to
Hmm.
defend ourselves because
Hmm.
that's the environment we was growing up in. You know.
Hmm.
But like I said, I'm from a working class family. My parents like taught me to like do female duties. Like I had to cook. I still had to come home and as a young child, I had to clean and do all those things. But I still, when I was outside and someone tried to test me, I had to defend myself. So
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I grew up. So that's why we had a reputation. We just had like in the 80s and 90s a real. I mean, they still have it now. A rough like the streets aren't that safe. Like I know they said New Yorker is so nice now, less crime, blah blah blah. But
Hmm.
no, there's a grittiness to New York still that New York people understand, especially if you grew up in like I want to say not all areas are bad because there's working class people who go to work every day and raise their families, but you do walk through certain areas where there's certain people who mean you no good and want to mess with you. So that's how it was.
Okay. Uh, what's so funny? You're there giggling.
It is. It's funny because people say, yeah, people say, oh, these New York girls are so tough, they're so this, so that. But think about it. If you're growing up in an environment, even in swankiest neighborhoods, you still you take the trains, you still encounter different people. And if people, I think what it is they like to pick on people because they deem them weak, and females are naturally the fairer sex or whatever, the weaker. Females used to get picked on a lot in my growing up. People used to get jumped all the time. It wasn't just a male thing. And growing up, it was a female thing. Females used to jump you, males used to jump you. It just was crazy. But I'm glad things have changed. I'm glad my daughter don't have to go through what I went through. Because it really does kind of you a bit like kind of harsh. It gives you like a harsh, like a cynic, harsh exterior. And I like to think I'm a happy person, but I had to go through that growing up. So
Okay. Extended clips. You have any additional points?
No, it's a great discussion, but I can agree with what the sister Kareem was saying. Good afternoon. I can agree with what she was saying. I have family in New York as well, from Brooklyn, and yeah, it's just one of those things where you use it when you have to, and hopefully you don't have to. But then you hopefully, yeah, like you said, that the decent word is very ambiguous, because it's like decent to what and to whom, because we're all human, right? So such an interesting concept,
Yeah. Well, you also see it even within your own family. Those relatives who, you kind of don't want them to come to the barbecue. When they
Right.
come, they're gonna ask you for some dough, or they're gonna
Right.
eat up all the food in the kitchen, or they're gonna start something. So even within your own family, you can have this, well, decent families and street families, I guess.
Right. Or you don't even want to go to the barbecue cookout.
Right.
It's tough. It's tough because on both sides, you still want to raise your family, even if they be in pain and down in society, and because we all have our ups and downs, and only God can judge all of us. But it's such a society always tries to bubble all of us in, every single one of us, the society at large, and I would guess the darker force, the devil, whatever has that that's the lure, that's the negative lure, that's I guess present. I personally was adopted by a white mom and a Mexican father in Oakland, so, and in the hood. So on one hand, it's like, okay, yeah, I don't care what color these people are. I'm still Ramon or Leighton or whatever my name is. I am who I am. But at the other end, I was so honored and blessed to have received some structure from the family, and love, and not overly affectionate, just decent. I guess in this case, decent parenting. So that it's interesting when you go from the individual to society. I say decency should apply to the individual, and you should kind of you know, uh, don't take any large group as such as a trusted confidant in a way. And that's when we go back to the game in the streets. That's how I kind of survived, because on one hand, you know, the family members that kind of took me and adopted me, it's kind of like Joseph, or in the Bible, he kind of got gifted or blessed into a new family, really a system, but that system didn't necessarily support Joseph or his father's vision. And I actually found that being lived life and having grown up and having to just stand on who I was, and the best of each system, but at the same time stick to a code in the streets that was like, look, I'll take it there because I've been at the bottom. There's nowhere else to go. except up. So if you want to come with me, good. If not, it's not cool, you know. So
Mhm.
and he actually, I looked at some videos of the elder scholar Elijah Anderson, and actually some of his one of the videos, I guess, of this book, I guess they did a promo video, and it was actually parts of it was filmed in Oakland, so it was very interesting,
Oh
you know,
wow.
to see that. Yeah, I recognized from the thumbnail right away. It was the BART train, and then I recognized the Philadelphia. He interviewed some people from Philadelphia, which I have family all over the United States, so you know you kind of get an understanding. You know, we all kind of network, and we find that okay, Chicago has this flavor, Philadelphia, New York, and even you might have a city so-called suburb, but what has infiltrated or what has populated in that society or in that group is culture, and so it's interesting, very interesting.
Okay. Yeah. I'll have to check that out to look for that.
Oh, yeah,
I'll have to
you've
look for
inspired me, and you inspire me to just like BGS inspired me to read certain topics and books, and it's true, these thumbnails and this energy of a knowledge and information, and when we celebrate and we focus on the information, then we say in street vernacular, all the sucker attacks and all the lame stuff, it won't apply to us because we've raised our standards, and that's what our elders, that's what our that's what that's what I vibe with you. That's why I connect with you and BGS and all my elders and all my brothers because that's what we esteem is the knowledge, the information, the word. We can come from anywhere and go to anywhere and be put in any system. And as society and AI is just flipping this whole thing inside out and upside down, who are we? We have to always ask that question. So this is a very important discussion.
Okay. Well, I
Thank you.
appreciate that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna do these as I go through piece by piece. There's the next little section. I probably could have tacked that on. I just didn't want to keep reading. Is actually about the decent single mother. So
Sure.
so that'll be the next one that I do. Sir Anthony said he's at work so he can't come up, but I will be doing more of these. And one of the things that sparked me to do this was later on in the book, he talks about what happens when there's a violent incident of some sort, and how the how they talk about how the community basically covers for the person who was involved in the violent incident. They say,
Sure.
okay, he was headed to college, he was doing this, he was doing that. And it's talking about how they cope with how communities cope with when people die or when people get shot or something like that. So
Sure.
that's when I read that, I was like, okay, we're still going through this now.
Sure. Sure.
I mean, maybe the actors are a little bit different, but we're seeing the same things play out now. So
it's always that condition, and we love everybody. It's that condition of the victim villain, and when it's convenient to play victim, we play that, or when it's convenient to produce a victim, we do that. And also, you had touched earlier in the conversation about the individual versus society at large's view of the individual, if I'm correct.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of interesting, and then even in the culture they have on one part, the person or us, we're subjugated to dysfunction. So it's like, okay, no snitching. But then when he gets his head blown off, it's like, yeah, he was everything and So we got to strike a balance in reality, and paint the narrative that no, we are valuable, living or dying.
Yeah.
Single, not single. That's that's the true value. So it's a very, very important topic. Really appreciative to be here and finally come up. It was
Okay, I
definitely
appreciate
compelling.
that, and I appreciate all your support over on the Facebook side too.
Oh no, it's love. It's nothing but love. And like I said, this steel sharpens steel, and we
Yep.
can't be great men if we don't have great men around us. And so I'm giving you your roses now. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that extended clips. Well, I'm gonna wind this one down. I'll give you two a chance to say anything else if you want to.
Ladies
Okay,
first,
I just
Kareem.
want to piggyback after Thank you, thank you. I just want to piggyback after what you were saying about the space giving us great knowledge and all these gentlemen in these spaces. You know, since I've been in here, I've learned so much. Even though it's a man-centered space, I've all the books with from Royale to these books Dr. Dunbar is introducing us to. You know, it's introducing me to a lot of things that I didn't even think about. I mean, some of the stuff I knew, but coming to the space has really, really opened a lot of stuff for me. And I just want to thank you to Dr. Dunbar for doing this, and thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you, Kareem, and thank you for the Cash App again. Thank you, Sir Anthony. Yeah, this is I'll be discussing this book for a little bit, piece by piece. So this is the first one. Okay, before I go, I'm going to show you guys my website again, because I just read from the literature and I'm working on a writing project myself, and I just rolled this website out. So part of this is advertising. So I started a writer's blog called Big Words Authors. Using it, my intent is to, you know, show my own writing chops and to launch my own book. But if anyone else out there is an aspiring writer and you want to get your start, you know, I will publish your piece for a fee or for a donation. That's the site there. I've currently published one of my own short stories, a book excerpt from a friend and a collaborator up in Toronto, and a relative. I just published a poem from her. The guidelines page is, well, as soon as this loads up, there it is. The guidelines page is there. That tells you everything you need to know about, you know, if you have a short story or a book excerpt or a poem, what you need, how you need to put it together. That's my email address right there for this site, info@bigwordsauthors. And yeah, there we are. So on that note, I will stop this stream and look out for more discussions on this book, Code of the Street. I'm going to select passages and go through them and read them like I did today, because I think there's a lot here. So I saw some new people come in. I saw BGS shared this. If you're watching this, if you came in and I said the numbers just jumped up to 11, please like the stream. If you watch it on the playback, please like it as well. Also, please subscribe to the channel. This is my smallest channel, but it will be good if it could catch up with the others. So everyone, be safe out there. You might see me in someone else's chat tonight, as I'm always watching YouTube and seeing what the other folks are doing. So enjoy the rest of your night. And as always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Take care, and I will talk to you the next time. Bye-bye.